What up guys, this is DeBoerium, and we're going to once again take a look at a Flat Earth channel. This channel is named That Guy and is relatively new, and recently uploaded a video explaining how density and buoyancy completely destroy the idea of gravity. So without further ado, let's take a look.
What's up YouTube, That Guy coming at you again with another quick video. This is going over the helium video I made a couple days or a couple weeks ago, whatever it was. A lot of people misunderstood the point, and I kind of can't blame them because I didn't use any kind of visual aid or any kind of anything visual, just words. Anyways, going over this again. This disproves gravity outright. Period. Proves density and buoyancy. And it proves all you need to have weight is density and volume. Mass, right?
Hold up, did you just say density and volume is all you need for weight? And then you say it is mass? First, we need to define the words you are using, and this should be enough evidence to discredit you before I even hear your evidence against gravity. Okay, so the words we need to define are density, weight, and mass. First, density. Density is a measurement that compares the amount of matter an object has to its volume. Second, mass. Mass is a measure by determining the extent to which a particle or object resists a change in its direction or speed when a force is applied. Third, weight. The weight of an object is defined as the force of gravity on the object and may be calculated as mass times the acceleration of gravity. So when you say,
And it proves all you need to have weight is density and volume. Mass.
you are saying that mass is equal to weight when an object with the same mass can weigh different depending on where you are on Earth due to the differences in centrifugal forces, which is a huge amount of evidence that we live on a globe that is rotating. Here's one example of just that. I lifted all of his measurements so that you saw it was not fictitious, analyzing his results, which he took from 4 different latitudes, all with different averages in weight. He then proceeds to compare his results to the one predicted by the globe model, and they seem to fit. The blue line is weight at sea level, and the red line is weight at an elevation of 180 meters. As you can see, the globe model can make accurate predictions and as well prove that mass is not weight. Just in case you say it hasn't been repeated, here's another example of this taking place. As you can see, this has been repeated. This further shows that mass and weight are not the same thing, as there was the same amount of matter within the object, while the weight of the object changed.
Mass is weight. Density and volume is all you need for weight. Here's the proof. You have a tank of helium, compressed helium, which is just more dense. You compress something, it becomes more dense, right? Compressed helium, step 1. Step 2, now fill a balloon. Fill a big balloon with the compressed helium, which will make it less dense. It'll have room to expand and become less dense and take up more volume. This is compressed, right? Step 1 actually was to weigh the tank. Weigh the tank first. The weight of the tank is X. We'll call it X.
Okay, so he lays out his evidence or experiment that disproves gravity, but it takes a while, so I'll sum it up into 4 easy steps. Step 1. Weigh a tank with compressed helium. Step 2. Fill up a large balloon with helium. Step 3. Weigh the tank again and notice it is lighter. For example, weighs 3 pounds lighter. Step 4. Observe that the 3 pounds of helium can now float and conclude that gravity is busted.
Helium rises. It floated away. Right? This is an observed natural phenomenon. Step 1 of the scientific process, right? Observe a natural phenomenon. We just took whatever the difference here between X and Y is. In this example, it's 3 pounds. We just put 3 pounds into a balloon and it floated away. This proves that gravity is not needed, right? We explained the phenomenon with density and buoyancy.
Okay, so first of all, density is not a force, and a buoyant force requires there to be a downwards acceleration for a fluid to have pressure, plus the equation for buoyant force includes gravity within it. The reason that the balloon floats is because of buoyant force, which you are saying disproves gravity, even though it is only present because of it. The balloon still has the 3 pounds of force pulling it down, but since it has gotten less dense and takes up more area, the buoyant force applied to the balloon is greater than the 3 pounds due to gravitational acceleration, thus it floats. The force of gravity is still at work. You did not disprove anything.
Weight is a product of density and volume. Volume is just the room you take up. Volume means you exist. You take up area. You take up room. You exist, right? And depending on your density within that space gives you your weight. A bar of gold is much heavier than a bar of titanium. They're the exact same size, take up the exact same volume, but their density is different. Right? And if you have a density and a set volume, and then let it have room to expand, it becomes a different weight.
The balloon, once less dense, does not weigh less. Gravitational acceleration is still pulling that object to the Earth with the 3 pounds of force. If you were to get rid of the air and just have the balloon in a vacuum, then the balloon would weigh 3 pounds. The reason for this is that the air is exerting a buoyant force onto the balloon, and once you take the force away, you are left with the weight caused by gravitational acceleration. Again, buoyant force requires there to be downwards acceleration. Here's an example of a helium-filled balloon in a vacuum. So as you can see, there still is a downwards acceleration present due to gravity.
Right? The less weight comes from less density in a more volume. The more area you take up and the less dense you are, the lighter you will be. Right? Just like the bar of gold. You lessen the density, it will weigh lighter. It takes up the same volume. All you need is density and volume to have weight. Gravity is not needed here in reality. This explains everything in reality.
First off, weight is directly proportional to mass. When an object has more density, that means that there is more matter present in a certain volume. If you take that 3 pounds of helium and compress it, you will still have 3 pounds of helium. If you put it into a balloon, you will still have 3 pounds of helium. This is backed by the law of conservation of mass. In this picture, a very simple demonstration took place. They had a piece of coal in an enclosed system that weighs 100 grams. They then proceed to burn the coal until it runs out, resulting in gas forming, and the result is the same weight. If you had an enclosed system with that helium tank within it, and had a mechanism to fill the balloon in such a way that the balloon would float inside the container would still weigh the same as when you started. The reason for this is that no mass was added, nor taken out. The problem that you have is that you are saying density is mass and then saying it is weight, when they all mean completely different things. First off, density is calculated with mass, and second, weight is a force and density is not. To prove to you density is not a force, just drop two objects of different densities in a vacuum. They fall at the same rate, 9.8 meters per second per second. With your logic, claiming weight is just caused by the density of the object, then the two objects of different densities would have to fall at different rates because they have different forces being applied to them.
Gases, fluids, liquids, the atmospheric layers, that's just density and buoyancy of the gases, right? Hot air rises, colder air sinks. This is all explained. Oil and water, and you can set an anvil inside of a tub of mercury and the anvil will float. It's all about density and all about buoyancy, 100% explained.
Okay, first off, buoyancy includes gravity within its calculations, and for the 1 millionth time, density is not a force. Here's some more evidence against that claim. Why don't things fall up? The air is less dense the farther you go up, so why doesn't it just go up? My point here is, why does density have a preferred direction? The reason for fluids or objects in fluids to float or sink is buoyancy. It only floats when buoyant force can overcome the downwards acceleration due to gravity.
You have weight because you exist, and you have a certain density. You're made up of real, tangible material, meaning you take up volume. You exist. And depending on your density and how big you are, the volume you take up, that's what creates weight. And the downward force that everybody's talking about is just weight. You stand on a scale and your weight will be forcing the springs down. You don't need a phantom force pulling you. Your weight is what causes the springs to compress.
Bruh.
Hold up, my friend. You're telling me that there is no downward force, but you happen to have weight? Which in your own words is not a downward force, but when you say it forces the springs in a scale down. Buddy, you're so wrong. Weight is caused by gravity. Here is some mathematical evidence that also proves you're wrong. Weight is a force, so by Newton's second law of motion, if there is a force on an object, there must be an acceleration. The SI unit for force is in newtons, which is used for when measuring weight. So there has to be a downwards acceleration to even have weight.
Objects fall because people drop them. This marker drops because I picked it up and dropped it. Had I never picked it up and dropped it, it would remain there for eternity, unless an outside force came along and picked it up, right? Everything would remain exactly where it is unless an outside force was applied. That's the outside force every globetard is looking for. Things don't just fall for no reason. They fall because somebody picked them up and dropped them.
That's a straw man. Nobody says objects fall for no reason. What you are saying is backed by Newton's first law, but also disproves your own point when saying there is no downwards acceleration as weight is a force. As the object once dropped would not move unless a force is acting on it, as it has a starting velocity of 0 relative to you.
Or wind blew something off a table, or an aging tree could no longer support the weight of the growing fruit because the fruit grew in volume and still has the same density, right? It has more weight. The stem can no longer support it. It falls through the less dense air until it hits the density of the floor. Or water. If an apple drops in water, it will float. All explained. You don't need gravity to have weight. This destroys gravity. Anyways, I'd like to hear what the comments are on this. And can't wait. Keep it flat. I'm out.
In conclusion, I already explained that your experiment does not disprove anything. You are saying mass is weight, which is a force, but for you to calculate a force, it requires an acceleration and a mass. You can't have a weight just because you exist. It requires an acceleration. I demonstrate that mass is not weight while providing evidence that we live on a globe that is spinning. Furthermore, you never explained what is causing that acceleration and why it has a preferred direction. And that's just the direction it prefers is not an answer. Yours truly, DeBoerium.